Hey creative friends, welcome to my channel, and in this video we're going to be canning pork, except we're not just going to can plain old pork, we're going to can roast pork in spicy broth. The spicy broth just sounds so good. I'm going to go over some of the ingredients for you so that you know what you need in order to make this awesome recipe. First of all, 3 pounds of a boneless pork shoulder, like a Boston butt or whatever, and what you want to do is cut those, get yourself a tray, cover it with aluminum foil, and cut them into nice 1.5 inch chunks. Now I have my oven set at 425, and I'm going to put this in. It's going to take about 30 minutes for it to brown up, because remember, it's roast pork. You can't just put this pork in there without having some roasty flavor to it. So the other thing you're going to need is 4 tablespoons of salt. Now I have this divided in, or teaspoons, I'm sorry, 4 teaspoons of salt, and I have this divided into 1 teaspoon separate and the other 3, which is actually a tablespoon, in separate, because you need to have those divided into those 2 amounts. Half a teaspoon of ground black pepper, and a tablespoon of canola oil. Now these 3 are going to be used to season the pork before it goes in the oven. So those are going to be set aside. The other thing you have to have, 2 quarts of a chicken bone broth. If you don't have chicken bone broth, I really recommend, let me get it for you. If you don't have your own broth, I really recommend the Better Than Bouillon, because it is so good. It's way better than, you know, like your powdery broth or bouillon cubes. I just think that it's a way better flavor for things. You need an 8-ounce onion, which was about a medium onion, and it just needs to be cut in nice thin slices. 2 tablespoons of crushed red peppers, right there, love that. 1.5 tablespoons of the dried thyme, or dried oregano, and 3 garlic cloves minced. So I have all these ingredients ready, but the only ingredient I don't have for this is Brian. So let me go get him and we'll get this thing going. All right, I got my most important ingredient here. I got Brian. So
Howdy.
So he's going to take the 1 teaspoon of salt and sprinkle it all over the pork pieces, the chunks, and then kind of like stew meat size chunks, I guess. There, perfect. Now the pepper and the canola oil. You're gonna drizzle. Oh my God. Yeah. Don't lose any of that pepper. Okay, that's fine. Now just drizzle the oil, the canola oil. Drizzle it. Then you're gonna take your hands and kind of mix it all up so those salt and pepper are all kind of nicely incorporated on those pieces of pork. So that's what Brian's gonna do. And when he's done with that, we're gonna put it in the oven for about 30 minutes to kind of roast it up, get it all nice and brown. And then what we're going to do is come back, because we're going to take all of this other stuff and make the broth. And then when that broth is done, we're going to put it all in the jars and can it up. I will tell you that we're doing 2 different pork recipes, and they both, that's probably good. I'm like, mix it up good. We're doing 2 different pork recipes. They both go for 1 hour and 15 minutes. So I'm going to do both recipes and stack my jars in the pressure canner, and I will show you how that looks in just a second. All right. You good? All right, we're going to put this in the oven and we'll be right back to you. All right, while the pork is roasting, Brian is going to make the spicy broth. So what we have to do here, dear, is to take the bouillon, and then the next 4 ingredients and the 1 tablespoon of salt. Oh, let me get the rest of that bouillon out of there. Kind of settled in. You can mix the rest of that. Here, let me toss this in there. You did what? Uh-oh. I'll wipe it up. Here, let me pour the rest of this in there. Perfect. Okay, there you go. Here, let me get this so you don't step in it. Oh, you did spill. I'll clean it up for you. Yep, everything. Okay, and then what you're going to do, you put all the things in there, even that red pepper and that bouillon, or that oregano. So good. It smells, it's going to be so good. I'm excited about this. And, you know, I've seen everybody doing this spicy broth with roast pork. And it just looks so good, and I never had an opportunity to do it, but you need to turn the burner on. Front. Yeah. I never had an opportunity to do it, but I'm so glad we get to do this together. This is fun.
Oh, yeah.
I know. I think so. All right, so then what's going to happen is you're going to bring this to a boil, and then you're going to let it reduce the heat and let it simmer for 5 minutes. Then I'm just going to put it on keep warm because that pork is still in the oven. And when that's all done, we're going to fill each jar half full with pork chunks, and then we're going to put this broth over it, and then we're going to put it in the pressure canner, and we're going to can it. I know, it's so exciting. All right, so let's, we'll just bring that to a boil, and then we'll set it aside, and we'll have it ready for when the pork is ready. The broth is done, the pork is done, and Brian is ready to put it in the jars. So he's going to get a jar out of the canner, which has about 2.5 or 3 inches of water in it. It's been setting at warm because these are hot pack. So you'll want to make sure that your jars are nice and hot so they don't crack when you add something cool. Here, I'll set that over here. So now he's going to take, you can use that ladle thing or a spoon, or you can pick it up. I don't care. You've got gloves on. So here, he's going to fill each jar about halfway with the pork cubes. That's good. Yeah, that's good. And now, set that right there. He's gonna, okay, you could probably, yeah, they're gonna be 6. So yeah, just a couple more pieces. Yeah, that'll work. Now you want to put this on, and you're gonna ladle, mix that broth up real nice, and ladle it so that it's 1 inch headspace, which means it comes to the bottom of the rim. Did you know that you don't have to sterilize your jars when you pressure can? Because it's going to get hot enough. And it's going to sterilize them in the process. Did you know that, dear?
Nope.
And now you do. And now, I think you're going to need a little bit more. This actually looks really good. And they were saying like different recipes. You could just use this as a soup. You could use this as a soup base. Lots of things. And now, perfect 1 inch headspace. Woo! Now you're going to debubble, because if you leave the bubbles in there, the headspace will go down when the bubbles work their way out from between the pieces of meat. And see how they kind of went down a little bit? You're going to want to add a little bit more broth. And now I actually do have a couple of tablespoons of vinegar in my water. Oh, you should use a funnel. It's okay, because you're going to wipe the rim. Perfect. Now take this. And I have vinegar in the water because the vinegar cuts down on the smell. Yes, and there's vinegar in here, and so we're going to use the vinegar to wipe the rim. Oh, no. Okay, it's happened before. Just wipe the rim. You still at 1 inch? Yeah, you're good. Just a light wiping. Perfect. Now, you want to get this. These are those 4 jars lids because they're awesome. And here's a secret, when you put your lids in a thing, if you alternate them like 1 up, 1 down, 1 up, it's a good idea. That way they don't nest and get stuck together in the water, because that's a big pain. Perfect. Now you're going to put a rim on there, a ring on there, and you're going to take it to just fingertip tight where it just goes, I'm done. Perfect. And then you come back a little. There you go. That's perfect. Now, I want to hold that up and show them how nice your pork in spicy broth looks right up close. Ooh, so good. All right, so we're going to go ahead and finish these jars and get them in the canner. Thumbs up, and we'll bring you back as soon as that's done. All right, Brian has all of his pork in spicy broth ready to go down in the canner. And there's water in there about like 2.5, 3 inches. And I've got 7 jars we ended up with, and I'm super excited. So we're going to go ahead and process this for 1 hour and 15 minutes. And then when that's done, we'll come back and show you the finished product. Actually, I should show you a couple things. First of all, when you have your pressure canner lid, always check your little valve right here. This is a release valve in case it's overpressure. It'll like blow if it gets too much pressure. And that will pop off and let the steam out, the pressure out, which is awesome. And then this little doodad is like a lock. So let me show you. Let me see if I can get you where you can see it. Oh, I don't think so. Let me see. There we go. Okay. Let me set you up here. See if you can see that. Okay, perfect. So this little lock, there's usually a little ledge right there. And when you put your lid on, that goes around there. And that little bit, I don't know if you can see it. Let me turn it upside down so you can see. This little thing pops up and that grabs on the, that locks, pulls tight, and it will lock. So that's when this thing pops up. You can see that it has popped up because that little thing is locked onto there. So that's how your lid locks on your canner. And then we're going to close the lid. I have a dual gauge canner. So what I have is I have a dial gauge and I have a weighted gauge. This is a Presto 23 quart canner, and you can have them converted. You can buy this little Pitcock with the little weights, and that's a 5 pound, and then they've got 2 rings that would be a 10 pound, and then the third ring will make it a 15 pound. I like that because then I don't have to worry about getting this checked every year, which if you're a dial gauge person, you need to make sure you get your gauge checked every year. So that way I don't have to worry about this, and I don't have to sit around and stare at it and kind of freak out that if it's not exactly right. Because when this is on here and it's rocking, I know that it's working. Because the reason it's working is because enough steam comes out of there and it will push it up and it'll go psht, and then psht, and you'll hear it. You'll hear that steam release. And so as long as it's doing that, and it's kind of like just sitting here rocking away, you know that it's 10 pounds because it takes 10 pounds of pressure to lift this off and go psht. So that's how it works. So if you have a weighted gauge, it's so simple, so much easier than this for me. But you know, there's gauge watchers. So I used to be a gauge watcher. So there's that. Now what I have to do is turn this on medium-high heat until steam is coming out of the vent. And then when steam is coming out of there, you want to let it go 10 minutes because it takes 10 minutes to evacuate all the cool air from around the jars and under the jars. That's why you have everything on a rack. It gets all the cool air out of there so that it can get hot enough and build the pressure in there so that you can properly can something. And I will tell you a little secret. See where this is? See what's above that? A microwave. And I will tell you, I learned from experience, always make sure that your little steam vent is turned away from your microwave. Because when this guy hits the door, it'll melt your door. And I can tell you why I got this new microwave. Well, it's not new, but I had to get a new microwave at one point many years ago because I literally melted the door. And it costs more to get a door replacement than just to buy a new microwave. So be real careful with that. So anyway, I now have the pressure canner ready to start venting, and once it vents, we'll go for 10 minutes. I'll put the weight on. We'll go an hour, and once you put the weight on, you then wait for either your gauge to get to the proper pressure or for your rocker, your weighted gauge to start rocking. And once it's at pressure, then we're going to count an hour and 15 minutes for these to be done. So when that's all done, we'll come back to you. I do want to tell you, it's an hour and 15 minutes for pints, and my altitude would be at 10 pounds of pressure or 11 on a dial gauge. If it's quarts that you're doing, it's an hour and 30 minutes. But we're just doing pints, so it'll be an hour and 15 minutes. All right, I suspect you can see, let me see if I can make sure that you can see the steam coming out there. So now I'm going to set a timer for 10 minutes and let that vent for 10 minutes solid, and I'll show you what it's like when I get back. So you can see how it kind of sputters a little bit. That's the cold air coming out of the canner. So once it gets a solid column of steam, it takes about 10 minutes, then all of the cool air has evacuated the canner. Okay, here's the thing I get asked about a lot is that little lock. It says top on it, on the Prestos, but you can see there's quite a bit of steam coming out. And there's like water sputtering, and that's fine. That's just the steam and the pressure coming out of the canner. But you can see it is there's a little water pooling there. That's fine too. But all of a sudden, there it is. You see how that locked? That now has locked the top of my canner to the base of the canner. And now look at the steam is really being forced out of here. So it'll take about 10 minutes, and then I'll show you that column of steam. All right, the 10 minutes has gone. Now I'm going to put the weight on. There we go. Now I'm going to wait for my weight to start rocking, or if you're a gauge person, this would need to be for my altitude at 11 pounds of pressure on a gauge, 10 pounds on a weight. And so as soon as that's rocking, I'll bring you back and show you what it looks like. All right, take a look. You see how I've just hit 11 pounds of pressure and my little rocker is rocking? Now I can set my time. My gauge works. I just don't want to have to sit here and keep looking at it. Now this is a reminder for you. If for some reason you lose power or something happens and you go below on your gauge, or your rockers or your weight stops rocking or making whatever noise or jiggling, however your canner goes, if it happens, you need to bring it back up to pressure and then start your timing process all over again. That happened to me once when I had we had a power outage, and so it was out for about 15 minutes, but I had to start tuna all over again after doing about, oh my gosh, I want to say 100 jars. I had to do the very last canner load over again. So anyway, so there we go. Now I can turn my heat down a little bit on my burner because the pressure's built up, and I will set my timer. And so, oh, I want to show you, see the little plug? It will push up too, so you know that that's a good flexible plug because it will pop out of there if for some reason something bad happens and you get a plug in here or something and the pressure gets too big. There's your release. So now we're just going to wait an hour and 15 minutes. The hour and 15 minutes has passed. I've turned the stove off, and I thought about videotaping and I didn't, but you can see that the timer has, the gauge is slowly going down and the weight has stopped. Now, just because the weight has stopped or the gauge is going down does not mean the process is done, because the actual cool down time is part of the process. So this time, you don't want to wiggle this and let the steam out to kind of speed things up. Just let it sit there. It's going to come to either this is stopped and then this will go down when there's no pressure, or this will go to 0 and this will go down when there's no pressure. And then you let it sit for another 5 minutes before you take the lid off, and then after you open it, you still let it sit for another 10 minutes, and that will prevent your jars from siphoning or losing liquid because the atmosphere changes in there. So we're just going to let it come back to 0, or let this go down so there's no pressure in it, and then we'll come back and I'll just open it and let it sit, and then I will remove the jars and you'll get to see what the finished products look like. Oh my gosh, the roast pork in spicy broth smells amazing. And you can see the onions in there. You can see the pork bits. And what I will do with that is I could thicken it up like a gravy. I could put it on rice, or I could just make it an awesome soup. So there you have roast pork in spicy broth. Brian's first attempt at pressure canning. He did 2 different pork recipes so far, and I think he did a great job.
Thank you.
So, as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.